Greetings, and thanks for joining us again for another bi-weekly update. My name is Carlos Salinas, and I am the Regional Director for the U.S. Soybean Export Council in the Americas. Before we get started, and as we always do, we'd like to share with you our growing membership. Within this wide and diverse membership, we have soybean processors, soybean exporters, seed companies, equipment manufacturers, railroad surveyors, brokers, among many other important stakeholders and funding sources. And we never forget the support and the financial contribution that we receive from the U.S. soybean farmer. Without that support, this presentation would not be possible. Today, we have a different agenda. I hope you find it valuable, and please continue to send us your feedback. We're going to talk about the really unfortunate situation in Rio Grande do Sul. You might have seen some of the videos and pictures on social media. Very unfortunate situation with the floods, and I do hope that the government takes some serious action and gives support to the people in need. We'll talk about price and volatility. We'll talk about the basis evolution in South America. We'll address some quality issues, and we'll end up with sustainability. So let's go ahead and get started. According to CONAB, the Brazilian Supply Agency, the crop is estimated to be around 146, 147 million metric tons in Brazil. But if we look at the state distribution, you will find that the state of Rio Grande do Sul, on the very southern tip of Brazil, they produce close to 22 million metric tons, or about 15% of the Brazilian crop. And we also know through different sources, you can give or take a few percentage points, but about 78% of the crop has already been harvested, meaning that there is 22% or close to 5 million metric tons to be harvested. Now, that seems to be the focus on the market, understanding the damage of those 5 million metric tons and what the situation is. I think there's more concerns that those 5 million metric tons, but the market seems to be very focused on those 5 million metric tons. To share more information about the state, according to our friends at Abiovi, the Brazilian Crush Association, they provide some excellent data, as well as CONAB. The state of Rio Grande do Sul represents about 15% of the Brazilian crush capacity. Doing some just rough numbers, that means that once those plants are running at about 90% capacity with beans, they crush about 840,000 metric tons per month, or produce about 670,000 tons of soybean meal. So certainly an important state, the fourth largest, at least in Brazil, from a crush capacity perspective. So indeed important, with a lot of meal consumption domestically as well. To me, the question is maybe slightly different. While we are concerned about those 5 million metric tons, but how about those 17 million metric tons that have already been harvested, that are likely in silos in the interior? They may be in transportation. Maybe they're some of it might be at the ports, and some small amount might have been exported, because, as you can imagine, they're just completing harvest, and not everything is exported immediately. It takes time. So while a small amount might have been exported, I think the greater amount still remains within the state. So some pictures were shared with me, and they kind of highlight the severity of the situation. And these pictures are some are soybean processing plants. I've seen pictures of wheat mills. I've seen pictures of ports and so forth, with a similar type of situation where there's been significant damage to, I guess, the agricultural infrastructure. I think the question many would have is, okay, what has been the damage from the crop, the infrastructure? How soon are they going to be able to resume crush operations? and so forth, which is that's why I believe the situation it's a bit more severe than what many anticipate. So again, it's unfortunate, but it is a reality, and we have to be aware. Let's talk about price and volatility. We have certainly seen an increase in volatility over the past month and a half. And I wanted to share with you a slide that was shared with you on April 1st, in our bi-weekly on the April 1st, where we said that the historical data has shown us that there was an increase, a likely increase in volatility. And when we talk about volatility, we're talking about implied volatility. That is how the option markets values that risk. Let's take a look at the number that was actually shared with you. When we normalize volatility at 100% for April 1st, we looked at those numbers April 1st through July 1st. And based on the data that we had on that particular time, we were able to say that 93% of the time volatility had increased during that time window, and it had increased as much as 75% on the extremes, and on the lower end, it had decreased by 18%. But we knew we were entering a period of higher risk, and we encourage many of you to seek your brokers and your risk management teams and look at the possibility of buying some options to seek protection on the upside or the downside. I think the reality today is that this dark blue line reflects what the increase on implied volatility has been. We know since April 1st that implied volatility has increased by about 27% for soybeans. When we go to soybean meal and we share with you what we had on April 1st, I think the chart is self-explanatory. Implied volatility for soybean meal over the past 15 years had increased about 87% of the time. So again, we had a very good opinion that what was likely to happen. And for sure, some of the data that we have right here since April 1st of 2024, we know that implied volatility for soybean meal has increased by 19%. So again, now many of you may wonder, well, what do you do now? What are the next steps? And I think the next steps are, again, the recommendation would be very similar. Certainly reach out to your risk management team, your commodity broker. And if you don't have one, within USEC, we have some very good commodity brokers that can certainly guide you in that process and seek some protection. My fear is once you enter these type of implied volatility levels, it's very difficult to predict what may happen, given that we just talked about the situation in Brazil, certainly driven by climate. We don't know what the future might bring. And I think, in my opinion, I've been surprised actually how implied volatility has not been higher, given all the political instability and climate instability that we have in our markets. Anyway, changing subjects, let's go talk about the changes in basis that we have seen in South America. And as we share with you some of this information put together by our friends in Sao Paulo, Ari Oleofar, very good and very well recognized broker. When we take a look at the evolution of soybean basis from April 26 to May 9th over the past couple of weeks, not many changes on soybean basis. You can say they're somewhat steady for the June and July window. When we take a look at the changes in soybean meal, again, April 26, no material changes. So I would say we're somewhat constant. I apologize. I put July and August SEP here. I meant to put June and July, but you can say that really there's no significant changes. But what drew my attention was really more the oil leg of the complex. And when we go back to April 26th, you can see that for June, for example, the bids that we had for soybean oil in Brazil, in the Brazilian paper market, were at 680 under. And for July, they were 700 under. And when we go to May 9th, you can see that the June bids are 350 under, and the July bids are 400 under. So depending on which month you look at on the bid side, those bids have increased by $66 to $73 a metric ton. certainly adding a very good contribution on the cash side to crush margins in Brazil. So we'll have to monitor, I think, how this evolves and how it may impact actually U.S. soybean oil flows if they do take place. So let's switch subjects. Let's talk about quality. And, recently we received the latest April data from our data supplier, Evonik. In this particular case, I want to share with you the energy contribution that we have on U.S. soybean meal versus other origins, specifically focus on hogs, on porks. And when you take a look at U.S. soybean meal and you take a look at those at that energy contribution and you measure it in kcals per kilogram, you can see that U.S. soybean meal stands out with that contribution of 2,204 kcals per kilogram. Compared to Argentina, Bolivia, and Brazil, we certainly have a very significant contribution. And I think it's important to consider if you're a buyer or if you're a formulator, certainly talk to your buying group, because if your alternative source of energy is some type of oil, some type of fat, which is likely very expensive, I think you would value U.S. soybean meal differently for this energy contribution. Again, this is focused specifically on hogs and pork production. Also, when you take a look at the uniformity of the data that we share with you on that contribution of higher energy contribution on U.S. soybean meal, you can see that also U.S. soybean meal has a lower standard deviation, or we can say that the distribution of that energy component is very uniform compared to the other origins. For the April data that was shared with us by Evonik, and I apologize, I didn't quote them here. I should have done so. And we all know that that implies that if you're taking a safety margin, if you're taking a one standard deviation safety margin, well, for U.S. soybean meal, that standard deviation safety margin would only be limited to 40 kcals, while in Brazil, per kilogram, Bolivia, and Argentina would certainly be higher. So I think another important factor to keep in mind is the uniformity of U.S. soybean meal in many aspects. In this particular case, we're talking about energy. So as I promised, we would talk about sustainability. And we had an interesting week in a discussion with one of our customers, and we always learn from our customers, and we appreciate their continued feedback. But this is in regards to Walmart's policies and guidelines related to soy and their aspirations to achieve deforestation-free and conversion-free soy for their private brands. And in this particular case, Walmart addresses the origin of concern for them. And you can see that in this particular statement, I'll just read the full sentence and leave it with you in that way. This includes all types of soy for food and consumer products, as well as soy used in feed for fish, aquaculture, poultry, and livestock associated with our value chain, originating from farms located in the Brazilian Amazon, Brazilian Cerrado, and Gran Chaco of Argentina and Paraguay. So if you're sourcing soy from these origins, you probably need to keep closer attention to what the Walmart policies are regarding their private labels. And certainly some of the expectations are that certain guidelines be followed. And in this particular red rectangle, you can see some of those guidelines, the principles of criteria of the round table on responsible soy, or CEFETRA certified responsible soy standard, obviously are recommended to be followed. And I would say, the RTRS certificates are available. Your supplier may have them. If they don't give them to you, you can buy them in the market. They do come at a cost. And you just got to keep that cost in mind whenever you're going to buy, again, soybeans from these regions, because you need to have those certificates. But certainly they're buyable in the market, at least the RTRS is. But again, I thought it's something very important for our customers in Latin America to keep in mind as you choose between one origin and the other. And if you're buying from these specific regions, just be aware, keep that in mind. particularly if Walmart is one of your indirect customers or direct customers for their private labels. I hope the information shared with you was valuable. We certainly look forward to your feedback, and I wish you an enjoyable couple of weeks. And again, I like to wish all the mothers that are celebrating Mother's Day, whether it is on Friday, whether it was on Sunday, a very happy Mother's Day. Thank you, and look forward to talking to you soon.